This video contains content sponsored by John Wilson Blades and MK Blades. Opinions discussed in this video do not reflect the views of John Wilson or MK.
Well, I guess, Adam, you talked a little bit about, being a trendsetter, but I want to talk a little bit about the program because you grew up watching skating back when everyone used to pretend to be soldiers. And, what were your young juvenile programs like? Were you the army man?
Yes, I was like the army man. I had like military costumes. And you know what? I've always had dreams to skate to like different pieces of music. Like this piece that I skate to, Let Me Think About It by Ida Core. It was my favorite song in 2008. And there was a piece of me that was like, I know one day I'm gonna skate to it, but I was like, oh, that's a fool's dream. But I sent it to Jeff Buttle, who, Jeff and I are kind of like brothers separated at birth. And I sent it to him and I never heard back. And I was like, oh my God, he hates it. He thinks that it's a joke. And I went to Toronto, still didn't hear from him. I met up with him the day before we started. And he's like, oh, I already cut the music, I love it. I was like, of course. So we got started. I went home, I showed Raphael the program. He's like, is this your exhibition program? And I could see that he was worried. I said, no. And he said, okay. So I started doing laps and I did it a few times that day. And by the end of the day, I could see him kind of like bobbing and like going like this at the side of the wall. I was like, he loves it.
How does Raphael feel about the tank top? Is he into it? Is he?
He loves it. He loves the weirdest. Okay, so when I first moved to Raphael, I had a program, and I was like, I want to change the costume. And he was like, I have this great idea. And I was like, tell me. And he's like, okay, you're going to have white pants, and they're going to flare out. And then you're going to have a white jacket, and it's going to have a huge collar. And I'm like, this bitch is describing Elvis. And I said, do you mean like Elvis? Yes, exactly. And I was like, okay, so I can't ever ask him for costume advice again. But I heard the rule. As soon as I saw the rule change, I was like, boom, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna go for it. What's the worst?
But why is the hair subdued then?
Because you have to pick and choose your battles, Dave. And you know what? I haven't had a natural hair color in almost 10 years, so I just needed to remind myself who I was. And this is who I am.
In a serious note, you're training with Nathan over the summer,
yes.
And last year, obviously, he's doing lots of quads every day in the rink. You're doing quads as well. Where are your quads? We know that you switched from the lutz to the toe.
Yeah.
You still working both? What's happening?
What?
We've seen you do toe, sow. Talk us through it.
I've done them all, but I haven't done them all at the same time. I was at Japan Open, and I had been training it really well. And then in the 6-minute warm-up, I tried one. And I went over to Raphael and I was like, I think I broke my ankle. But I was like, I have to skate because I don't know if my teammates are going to get the money if I pull out. So I was like, okay, just get your head together, go out there. And then it was just sore, and it's been kind of sore. So it really pushed me to start working on the toe. And my toe's gotten a lot better. And I really feel confident that I can do a nice one tomorrow, and that's going to be my goal. And I wanted to alternate between so that I could eventually put them both together in the program.
How have you changed your mental game? Because, 3 years ago in Boston and Skate America before that, you'd go into the quad lutz and you'd look tight. You would look really, you were going for it, not going for it, and the skate in.
I think that's because I was tight.
Okay.
And I was really worried about it, and I didn't know how it would dictate the rest of the program. And so I really focused on training that element, and I never do the quad by itself at home. I always do it in at least 2 or 3 elements right after. So it's just in my system, no matter what happens, I'm ready to go. And like I said up there, I feel like a professional performer, a professional athlete. I'm ready to adapt to whatever situation is happening. But when I do see somebody like Nathan, who's doing 5 quads, I'm not gonna do that tomorrow. It's impossible. I'm not 17. I'm 26. So I have to kind of take a different approach. And so my approach has to be a little bit more mindful. He's already had hip surgery. I've never had a surgery. I'm knocking on these Sears-centered chairs. And so, I've had a relatively healthy career, and mentally, I've really focused on taking the whole thing as a whole rather than one thing dictating. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Rather than dictating how that element is going to affect the program.
You were with Nikolai when you were younger. So, like, at what age did you? He was at ice dance, obviously not a real technical specialist, though he coaches everything. What age did you really start getting serious about the quads? And do you think you needed to do it earlier to have them?
I think when I worked with Nikolai, that's when I first really got serious about competing. I really learned how to compete when I was working with Nikolai. I think he's a really brilliant coach. I learned a lot from him. I still use a lot of the things that he's taught me in my training today. It is very coherent to what Raphael tells me. But when the world of skating wasn't doing a quad, it wasn't too important. If you remember, my triple axel used to be shady as hell. And so I was really focused on that. And then when I started working with Raphael, he really kind of took that ceiling of what I thought was possible for myself away. And every year, I feel like that ceiling gets higher and higher. I'm always striving to be a little bit better. So I think as soon as I started working with Raphael, I kind of gained more confidence in myself and what I thought was possible for myself. I kind of felt like I had reached a cap and I'm just kind of going to do the best I can. But now I feel like the sky's the limit.
You were so honest about, seeing with the panic attack, and I know you're like half kidding, but maybe not. But
Oh, I was fully serious.
But going through all the different generations of skating, like you said. But realistically, do you think that you and Jason, can compete for medals at the Olympics with?
Well, I mean, I think that people may not have thought that we would be second and third after the short program here today. But you know what? I can't speak for Jason, but my strategy was to do everything to the best of my ability. And it's paid off with good marks. And Raphael knows that that's my strategy going forward, so he doesn't take anything other than what he considers to be my best attempt acceptable in practice. So I could do a clean short program, he'll still be upset if things aren't landed the way that he thinks that they should, the way that he knows that I can. So, he wasn't incredibly pleased with what I did, but he was proud of me that I was strong and I went for everything. But the goal is to do everything at like a +2, +3 quality, because that'll translate. And like I said up there, my brothers and sisters, they don't really know what I'm doing. But if you skate a clean, beautiful program, that's what the competition, I feel, is all about. Because if you want me to try 5 quads, I will. It'll be like a shit show, but so I won't. But when I go out there, I want to put on the best performance I can, because that's what I remember growing up. I remember Michelle Kwan making me want to rip my heart out because she was so good. I remember Tara Lipinski having that moment. I remember Alexia Gudin. And yes, they could have looked around, they could have seen Timothy Gable trying 3 quads, but they did what they knew was their best, and they pushed themselves to have those clean performances, because I feel like that's what really gets people involved in skating.
And the judges too, people.
Absolutely. Judges are people.
Are you hoping to put in 2 quads for nationals?
I absolutely am. I'm working on maybe even doing 3. I have been, it's what I practice at home. I try to do a bunch. It's not always pretty. But that's another thing in practice. I'm not so worried about being perfect in practice anymore. I am not afraid to get in the dirt and be muddy and just be a mess and just put the hours in, because I realize that I get a lot of confidence from the hours, from the repetition. And then when we get close to the competition, we put together a strategy of what's going to be the best case scenario for me to go into that event and do as well as I possibly can.
Raphael's style not having this specific. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. No, you go.
So then tomorrow, are we seeing something completely new, or what are we going to be seeing?
So it's a completely new free skate. But the second half I did as an exhibition on the Stars on Ice tour. Okay. And so I've actually skated it longer than the free program I had before. It was a really easy transition, and I said in the mix zone yesterday that if at this point in my career I can't switch something around really quickly, it's time to reconsider.
Yeah.
Because you know what, I trained an order of elements. Making a few tweaks to a few steps here and there shouldn't be a big deal.
Why did you want to do it?
I wanted to make the change because I just felt that the music plateaued a bit, and that was the main comment that I was getting from the judges at the earlier competitions this season. And I just had gotten a lot of compliments of my from about my bird program, and in the back of my head I was always like, this is such a special program, I want to do it next year for the Olympics. And then I actually talked to my really good friend Florent Amodio, because we had done a tour together and we were at Japan Open together, and he's like, that's a great program, and he's like, if you have a good idea, you have to use it now. You never know what's going to happen. He's like, I'm not hoping anything happens, but you never know what's going to happen. You have to take advantage of the ideas you have now. And my good friend and choreographer, Benji Schwimmer, he also said sometimes I'm so sorry, I'm like punching everybody. Sometimes we get little moments of genius. And he was like, people aren't genius, sometimes they're given moments. And if you get them, you have to take advantage of them. And so that's what I thought that I needed to do. So I was in Japan, I called Benji, I said, can we meet as soon as I land? So I went from LAX home, dropped my stuff off, and went out, and we worked in the studio. We got it done in 2 days.
So you're doing a bird program. We can only imagine if Johnny Weir did a bird program, what he would wear and what Christine would write about it. So what do you have? What does Adam Rippon skating to a bird look like?
You know, what's your costume?
So it's just so the story is I was a bird that led the pack, and then my wing is broken or hurt, and so I am kind of skating around, and you'll see different like homages to my wing being hurt, and the costume really isn't over the top, because in this case I really think the movement is so unusual to skating, especially working with Benji and having that time to do it on Stars and Ice. I really paid attention to the little nuances we did, and I think the program is a little bit avant-garde that the costume didn't need to be. It didn't call for it. So, I mean, it's still mesh. Like, I can't go out there and not have like some wind on my stomach. It wouldn't be a competition.
Well, I want to ask you, because Raphael doesn't have like set lessons necessarily for each skater, and he kind of picks apart as you're skating, you almost have to compete for his attention. And when Nathan is doing quads and Ashley's doing what she's doing, how much does that push you to make sure that you're looking good so that he's looking at you and help you get better?
To be honest, well, when I worked with Nikolai, it was sort of the same setup. And now
Nikolai might be in the ballet room if you're on the
yeah. And sometimes when I would work with Raphael, sometimes he doesn't watch so he'll come out to the practice, he'll go to the bathroom, he'll go outside, and it's sort of like a motivational tool that like, okay, you need to do more to step it up. But I would say that Raphael doesn't really work with me that often, or that much. He'll work with me a little bit on a few exercises he wants me to do to improve my quads or whatever, but when I'm out there, I try more to be a role model for the other kids on the ice. That what I'm doing, they need to step it up and do what I'm doing. And Raphael comes up to me and he's like, you need to push these kids. You need what you're doing, they start to do more when you do more. So that's what I kind of feel like. I feel like the leader of the group, the role model, and I kind of use that to kind of push myself in practice. That like, okay, I want to do well because they're gonna get better, and if they get better, I'm gonna want to get better too. So that's kind of how I use that situation of no set lesson time, just a set practice time where Raphael is kind of like overseeing everyone.
Now that you've changed your programs, you did choreography in the past. How much of your programs are you? How much is Jeff? How much is Benji? How does that kind of?
So when I work with Benji, he doesn't know how to skate at all. And I actually gave him a pair of my old skates that don't fit him, but he likes to get on the ice and kind of sympathize with the gliding forward and gliding backwards to kind of have an idea. But we'll go on we'll be in the studio, we'll do everything on the floor, but then there's so many transition steps that he just doesn't know, or he wouldn't know to put a rocker here, or a counter here, or a 3-turn would work here. So I work with him for maybe 5 or 6 hours in the studio, and I'll go into the rink on my own, maybe 4 hours, and I'll figure it out on my own. And so I only worked with Benji one day. The second day I tried to put everything on the ice. I made up all the steps, and doing choreography for others has really helped me in that respect. So I made all the transitional steps and everything like that. And Benji hasn't seen it since, but we'll do follow-up and we'll take it from there and we can add things there. But because he doesn't know how to skate, it really is 50-50.
Well, best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you.